Chelsea. Thanks for being here. Shanice, hello. Awesome. So I think let's go ahead and get started. We have someone from the UK. Amazing. Welcome. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Viome. You can call me Gabby. I'm an assistant director of admission here at Skidmore. I'm actually an alum myself. I graduated in 2021 and decided to stick around for a little bit. I'm really excited to welcome you to our Creative Thought Work series. This series aims to amplify Skidmore outcomes and current student journeys through themed panels that reach a large audience of prospective students across the country and around the world. So our session today is titled Creative Thought Doesn't Stop, Summer Research Opportunities. I'll ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves before we begin our moderated discussion, which will be recorded and available on the admissions website. Afterwards, we'll move to Q&A, where questions can be submitted through the chat feature. So with that, panelists, please share your name, class year, majors, minors, and anything else you'd like to share with us. Let's go alphabetically by first name. So Addie, if you wouldn't mind getting us started.
Hi everyone, my name's Addie. I have a cat in my lap right now, so if I'm looking down, that's why. I use they, she pronouns. I'm a rising senior, double majoring in psychology and philosophy. I'm originally from a small town in Northeast Ohio, but now I go home to Wisconsin. And oh my goodness, I'm involved in so many different things. Obviously research, that's why we're here today. I do research in the psychology department. I know we're gonna get into that more a little bit later. I do that during the school year as well. I've been a TA for a few different psychology courses. I'm a writing center tutor. I work at admissions as a tour guide, and this summer I'm an intern there. I'm one of the head science guides as well for our tour guides. I was abroad in Copenhagen last semester. Yeah, that's the abridged version of all the things I do on campus.
Very busy. All right, let's go over to Katya.
Hi guys, I'm Katya. I'm also a rising senior here. I'm a double major in psychology and theater. I also have a minor in business. I've been really involved with the psychology research. Actually, Addie and I are in the same psychology group, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. So yeah, both over the summer and during the school year. And I've also been in a couple of other psychology groups in the past. I also am very involved in the theater department, so primarily as a director, stage manager or dramaturg, but I've done kind of like a little bit of everything at this point. And I also work in our on-campus writing center where I've been one of the head tutors.
Beautiful, thank you. Let's go over to Cole.
Hey everyone, my name's Cole. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a rising junior here. And I'm on a pre-med track as a biochem major and honors for a minor. I do a lot of things around campus, but in my free time, I definitely like to play music. I'm involved in like the music scene around here. And yeah, I play guitar. But yeah, also a lot of cool research. And I've been doing research ever since a freshman, I guess, which feels like a while, but I really like it.
Amazing, thank you. Let's go over to Melanie.
Hi everyone, my name's Melanie. I'm a rising senior here at Skidmore. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Long Island, New York. I study psychology and social work as a double major. This summer, I'm here doing research in the social work department, but I've previously done research in 2 different labs in the psychology department as well as in the religious studies department. So if you have questions about any of that, I'm happy to answer that. But next year, I'll be the co-president of Psy-Chi, which is a National Honors Society for Psychology. Of course, our chapter here at Skidmore. And I also recently got back from a semester abroad in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Awesome. And last but not least, Rachel.
Hi everyone. So my name is Rachel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a rising senior and I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I'm a chemistry major and environmental science minor. And on campus, well, I just came back from also a semester abroad. I studied abroad in Ísafjörður, which is a small fishing village in Northwest Iceland. And I love to talk about that. And I also work as a TA on campus in the chemistry department. And I also love my job as a barista at our on-campus coffee shop.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. That study abroad program sounds so interesting. All right, great. So thank you all for those introductions. We're going to move right along into our moderated discussion for the first 20 minutes or so. So we've asked all of you here this evening because you've been participating in Skidmore's summer research programs. And from what we've just heard, you've been working on some pretty amazing things. Would each of you mind just giving us a brief overview of the research that you've been working on this summer? Does anyone want to start us off? Yeah, Katya and Addie, you can kind of tag team if you want.
Um, well, yeah, so this summer we were continuing doing the work that we have already like been doing during the school year. You know, right now our psychology lab, we focus on more like clinical psychology stuff, so specifically treating anxiety and worry. And so we're right now developing a smartphone app, kind of like to help out with with anxiety and worry and depression as well. That specifically teaches people about the intervention called savoring. So kind of like enjoying kind of like your moments, like engaging with your positive emotions and so on. And so that's kind of like the overview. But like what exactly we're doing during the summer is like recruiting participants for that study, helping them to like set up the app, teaching them about savoring, and then like making sure like they're supported throughout the intervention. So it's a 5 day long study, and then afterwards like emailing them for like the post trial survey, collecting all this data, and then analyzing that data. So it's pretty much like from the beginning to the end, like all of like research, the whole research process, so which is super valuable. And yeah, so we did 5 weeks of that in June. It was a 5 week kind of program that you can do research over the summer, either for 5 weeks or for 10 weeks. So did you have anything to add on to that?
I mean, that was pretty thorough. The only thing I think I would mention also is that we were doing all of this to kind of set up the lab for what we're doing in the fall. So now we're going to be doing a like full-fledged study with like different conditions and things like that to test how effective the app is. So this summer was mainly getting user feedback, doing some beta testing, that sort of thing to kind of prep work for all of that that's going to be happening in the fall. So that was the main goal for this summer, and we did pretty good. We got a lot of participants. So we're somewhat looking at that, the results coming in now.
That sounds really, really interesting. Does anyone want to go next?
I can go.
Sure, Rachel.
So I'm a chemistry major, as I said, and I do atmospheric chemistry research here at Skidmore. And I joined this group in my freshman year, and I stayed the summer after my freshman year. And then, so this is my second summer doing research in addition to doing it in the school year. And so I do atmospheric chemistry research, as I said, and my research focuses on ash particles in the atmosphere, which can be from things like power plants or dust storms or volcanic eruptions. And so these ash particles in the atmosphere, they contain metals, and we specifically focus on the iron content of these metals. And so when these particles are emitted into the atmosphere, a layer of water forms around these particles that is really acidic. And this causes the iron to leach from the particles into this aqueous layer around these ash particles. And so when the iron leaches into the water, that can cause the iron to end up in our oceans. So we run simulations in the lab to simulate this process to try to understand the mechanism of the iron leaching from these particles into the water and then eventually into the ocean. So we run simulations on that.
That's fascinating. Thanks, Rachel. Caller Melanie?
I can go next. Mine's a bit different. Mine's a very qualitative process. So I work with my social work professor whose clinical focus before she switched over to academia was trauma and intimate partner violence. So we've been working interviewing youth aged 12 to 24 years old about parenting in the context of intimate partner violence, also employing the use of arts-based research, particularly the method of storyboarding. So in addition to 6 qualitative interview questions, we have our participants kind of draw out what they're thinking and feeling throughout the process so that they can better explain or better voice some of the narrative that they've been discussing throughout the interview. So we're still collecting data, but that's primarily what we're trying to study.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Melanie. And Cole.
Yeah, so my research is also different. I'm in the inorganic lab here, so we focus on a lot of like metal chemistry, and specifically, we're trying to model this enzyme called superoxide dismutase, which reduces superoxide ion, and that's like a byproduct of respiration, causes cancer, all sorts of negative things in the body. And so each student in our lab is given a specific compound. We're trying to make these, so we're specifically working with manganese superoxide dismutase. So we're trying to mimic that enzyme and characterize these compounds if in a variety of different ways, like how stable are they, like how well do they mimic this enzyme, how like well can they be implemented in the body, but we're trying, so we do a lot of like synthesis of these new compounds, but also characterization as well.
Super interesting. And I do want to make a quick note. As Katya said, so the research that everyone here is working on this summer, these are typically 5 to 10 week programs during the summer at Skidmore. During the academic year, students can start doing research as soon as the second semester of their first year. So you can really kind of get a nice head start on research if you want to. And a lot of these students are doing that student faculty research, which are wonderful opportunities, which can lead into these summer research opportunities, which is really, really great. So the research you've been working on this summer, very impressive, all of you. I'm kind of curious, how were you able to come across these opportunities? Did you have to do like an application process? How did that work? Do a couple of you maybe want to talk about that? Yeah, Katya.
I mean, honestly, like it was pretty straightforward. Like for the most part, it's like it's your professor writing the actual application, kind of like putting yourself forward. Like I know, like our professor like wrote a kind of like a almost like a recommendation letter for both me and Addie, kind of like outlining why this is a good opportunity for us, and then we were able to get accepted. So yeah, like for us, it was basically we had already been in the lab for several semesters. The professor knew us really well, and then like the question of like doing research over the summer came up. We just talked to him, and he was like, yeah, it's going to be great, let's certainly apply and then see what happens. So because during summer research, like you're fully sponsored, your housing is sponsored, your meals are sponsored, also like you obviously are getting paid, as if like it's a regular job. So it's it can be a bit competitive, but like as long as you're a good student, as you've been like doing research for a while, like it should be pretty attainable. So kind of like that's the process. But on our end, I think we just needed to like maybe like fill out like a few short forms, and that was it. And that was all happening at the beginning of the spring semester, so like late January, early February.
Gotcha. Anyone want to add anything on that?
I can only speak to like my experience in the chem department, but so my freshman year, I was sponsored by the Skidmore Faculty Student Summer Research Grant. But since I got that for my first year, my advisor recommended that he didn't think I would be able to like be a competitive applicant to get it for a second year. So this summer, I'm sponsored through my professor's personal grants from the National Science Foundation. So there's definitely multiple avenues for funding outside of just the Skidmore grant.
That's super interesting. Great. Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, so I actually applied for the funding, and I actually didn't make the cut for this round. It was a super competitive cut, but I ended up actually being able to secure departmental funding. I know a lot of my friends as well are able to have that, so they also have that reserve as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm kind of curious, do maybe a couple of you want to talk on funding and what that typically looks like? Yeah, Addie.
I mean, I can talk about the student faculty research funding. So if you are a part of that program, then your housing and meals are paid for the entire length of time that you're doing research. And you're also getting paid, it's usually around $15 an hour for all of the hours that you are putting into that research.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So I'm also kind of curious, what has like a typical day doing research looked like? Like, what do the hours look like? What's kind of expected of you on a day-to-day basis during the summer? Yeah.
Um, I can talk a little bit about that. So usually, like when you apply, you apply for it's like just doing research full time. So like typically it's 40 hours per week, but it also can be fewer than that. So like I think like the minimum is 20, but like then like it goes up to 40. So I was able so in June when I was doing research, I was able to balance it with like working in admissions. So like I would like give tours in the morning and then walk over to our lab in the afternoon, and then it would look different. So like some days we would have, for example, like a meeting with our professor when we would just like talk about research for 2 hours, kind of brainstorm ideas, like talk about like the problems we've encountered and so on. Other days it would be just like running participants, like maybe like having like 2 or 3 participants per day, and so each of them is like an hour. And sometimes it would be like more flexible tasks, like like that you don't have to be in the lab for, like just like sitting down and like analyzing the data that we've received, maybe writing something, maybe like meeting up with Addie and like brainstorming things that our professor asked us to like think through. So yeah, it's like it was like honestly like a great variety of tasks. Like it didn't feel like very repetitive, and yeah, we only did like about like 20 hours per week. So yeah, it's also possible to like balance it with another job as well.
Anyone want to jump in on that?
Oh, you go.
Sorry. I can also talk. I think Katya and I had a similar experience in the way that we split our hours between doing research and a secondary job on campus. The reason for my research only being like 20 to 25 hours a week is because we're at the very preliminary stages of research. We're in our recruitment process, and recruiting for a qualitative study is incredibly challenging at times. And so a lot of our focus has been, we have weekly meetings like 2 or 3 times a week where we'll kind of use it as group work time, which kind of just means doing our own independent work, talking out loud about things. We've been really working on our literature review, so creating the contextual foundation for why our research is important, what gaps we're filling. And then we finally, as we've been having participants, we finally started coding their data. I don't mean, like computer science coding. We read through a de-identified transcript of what each participant has said so that their confidentiality remains. And we read through that, find commonly occurring phrases or words that not only contextualize what they're saying and encapsulate what they're saying, but also what other participants have been saying. And then we use those codes to make themes, which help us kind of figure out what our results are for the entire research project. So we have very preliminary results because we've only had a handful of participants, but as we get more, we'll code through those and create themes to finish up our results.
Yeah, and Rachel, did you want to jump in there as well?
At least in the science, or at least in chemistry and like my research, we typically like we get some independence and we get to run our experiments, but then our advisor, our research advisors, they're usually always around, especially during the summer. It's one of the advantages of staying during the summer. Your advisor isn't necessarily teaching a class load and doing research. Their focus can be research during the summer, so I find that they're very available to help. Not that that's not the case during the school year, but the focus during the summer really gets to be research. So you really get to move along your projects during the summer. And I think the progress is a lot slower during the school year. So I think it's really helpful to stay for the summer.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question, is kind of just like the benefits of doing summer research or just research in general. I think a big benefit, generally speaking, of doing research at a small liberal arts college is you're not competing with graduate level students for those research opportunities. You're really able to, again, build those relationships with faculty members. I feel like a lot of these research opportunities you can come by pretty easily just in building those relationships. So I'm kind of curious if any of you want to add any other benefits that you found, either in doing research during the academic year or staying in the summer. Yeah, cool.
I just feel like you're given a lot of responsibility. At least I feel like I am, and like my impression is that other people are too. And like I feel like when progress is made, like when I'm making progress, I'm like, I feel like I'm really doing it. and like I feel very responsible for like my project and like where I'm getting. And yeah, like people were saying before, like in the summer, like you can get so much done and your professor's around, like always there to help. And also I feel like I'm learning so many new techniques. Like I feel like during the summer, each summer, I mean it's my first summer, but hopefully I'll be here next summer. But I just feel like I've learned so many different techniques. And like I can use those techniques if I was applying for grad school. And I can be like, oh, I know how to do XYZ. And I feel like summer's a great way to learn a lot of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Addie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just kind of echoing what everyone else has been saying. Two big things for me have been like getting to know the professor personally. Um, After being in my research lab for one semester, my professor asked me to be his peer mentor, which is kind of like a TA for first year students. And that like that's basically the only context my professor had known me in, but just doing that was enough to feel like he was confident in my ability to do that for him. Um, and then obviously we got to know each other incredibly well when I was his peer mentor. And then as for summer research specifically, um, I I really enjoyed having it be even more of a small group. Because obviously in a small liberal arts college, you're in a relatively small lab. You get a lot of attention that way. But over the summer, it was just me and Katya and our professor. And so we were able to ask any and all questions that we had about the research, dive into deep, random niche discussions about topics, and just kind of like go where the wind blew us in terms of like discussions and like things that we were interested in. So I found that to be incredibly valuable for that side of things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, Katya.
And I want to add on to that that like especially like doing it now like as like I'm like as like we're going into our senior year and like are working on a lot of like independent research stuff like as for our like senior thesis and whatnot. It's like very helpful to like kind of like get this like um this experience over the summer of like having that much responsibility and like really understanding how research process works even like to like a greater extent than like during the school year where like we might have had like maybe like one meeting a week and like maybe like do like a couple of hours of research work a week, but here it was like every day for like like hours and hours every week. It's honestly like super beneficial as I'm like thinking about like my like research like my independent research during this upcoming like year, which is eventually going to be just like very helpful for grad school as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I want to ask actually one more question before we turn over to Q&A. And that's just what advice would you give to prospective students that are here in this Zoom room that might want to pursue research in college? Or any advice works. Addie.
I love when we all hold our hand up at the same time. My biggest piece of advice, and you can use this for literally anything, but especially for research, don't be afraid to talk to people if you know they're doing something that you're interested in. Even if it's just like, hey, can you tell me more about this? Just to like show your interest. It can go a long way. They'll remember you. They'll remember your name if it's something you have to apply for, things like that. So don't be afraid to just kind of like get your foot in the door and reach out.
That's great advice. Yeah, Melanie.
Um, my advice stems from a different way. I actually didn't have any sort of inclination that I wanted to do research before I went to college. I didn't think it related to anything I wanted to do. I had written it off. And as you heard at the beginning of this panel, I've been a part of 4 different research projects during my time here. So being open to different opportunities is also really good. All of you are here because you have interest in research, but not closing yourself off to one type of research or one path to doing that is always helpful, because I mean, I had no intention of doing religious studies work at all, and that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, and I have absolutely no regrets about doing that, even though it doesn't necessarily pertain to anything I want to do professionally. It was a really helpful skill building experience for me.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point to make. You have to understand research isn't just in the hard sciences. There's research in all different types of academic areas of study. So anyone can really pursue research at Skidmore, small liberal arts. Everything is very open to everyone, which I think is really nice. Did anyone else want to add? onto that before we move on? Yeah,
I'd like to say just that research opportunities and like pursuing STEM research at a small liberal arts college, just because it's a small college doesn't mean the research opportunities are lesser than even a big research university. I think I really gained this perspective last summer. I did an internship at the University of Mississippi, so massive research school, but I found that their chemistry department, as opposed to our chemistry department, probably had comparable like number of instruments and labs. We have so many different instruments and analytical instrumentation here at Skidmore. So I think just the opportunities here aren't lesser than a big school. And that's not something like you don't have to sacrifice doing impactful STEM research if you decide to go to a small school. Like those two things can coexist, and I think they do coexist.
Yeah, that is such an important point. So thanks for adding that in there. Great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. At this time, we're going to move to our Q&A portion. So attendees, you can submit your questions to panelists using the chat feature available at the bottom of your screen. I'll go ahead and relay those questions to our panelists. Given that this event is a chance for you all to engage with our current students regarding their experiences at Skidmore, we do ask that you try to refrain from questions asking about the admissions process. Instead, ask questions about their time here at Skidmore and their current experience. We'll end the Q&A just before the top of the hour to close out our session. So if anyone has any questions for our wonderful panelists, feel free again to just throw those in the chat and I will relay those out. You can also come off mute if you would like to. Yeah, what's social life like on campus? And I do want to make a note too. You can totally ask questions that don't necessarily have to relate to research either. If you want to ask general questions, that's also welcome. So, what's social life like? Or what does social life look like for you? Yeah, Addie.
This is somewhat a cheesy answer, but it's what you want to make of it. And I say that mostly because I'm someone who likes to get to know people one-on-one. I'm not really a huge fan of big groups or parties or things like that. And while those do exist at Skidmore, they're not the only avenue to make friends. You don't have to go do those things in order to be a part of the social scene on campus. And so it's really what you want to make of it and how you want to reach out to people. Everyone's very friendly. Everyone wants to get to know other people. You're all in the same boat coming into your first year here of wanting to make friends, wanting to make your own little social group. So that's been my experience with it.
That's a great answer. Does anyone want to add on to that? Yeah.
I would say, I mean, there are a lot of popular clubs like within just like Skidmore community. So like we don't have any Greek life, so no sororities, fraternities, and therefore a lot of our like social life is focused on clubs, which is great because you get to like make friends with people who also share an interest with you, which is really wonderful. Some of the departments themselves are very tight knit. Like speaking as like a theater major, like I know pretty much everyone within the theater department. It's basically like one huge friend group because we like tend to like work on the same shows and so on. And also, I mean, that includes in people who are not theater majors, but who are just like, you know, like doing theater on the side in addition to like everything else they're doing. So yeah, and then also like because like a lot of people here tend to like either double major or like major with minor or two minors, even three minors, and then you get to kind of like explore different parts of campus, so like you're not really like stuck with like the same people who are in your major and like that's all everyone you ever see. It's more kind of like getting to know people from across campus, which is really nice. So like all of my friends are like so different. I'm like, how did I even like get to know all of them? So yeah.
Anyone else want to add on to that? Okay, cool. So we do have some questions coming in. What was the biggest challenge you faced during your research? If you did face a challenge, and what was the solution that you came to? That's a great question. Yeah, Melanie.
When working with people as your participants, and you're asking not just to answer a survey, but to share the most vulnerable parts of their lives. It's really hard, one, to get people to sign up and agree to do that and share that, even within the confines of confidentiality. It adds another layer when they're minors and they're young and they need parental consent as well as minor assent. And so there's three consent forms that have to be signed. And by the time, you're asking for that to be done, people kind of it's a challenge to recruit people, I'll say. And so it can be really discouraging when you're not getting people to sign up for your study, and you have peers around you whose research is at far beyond where you are in your research, and you feel like, oh no, like I'm not doing enough, I'm not, making an impact, and it's really discouraging and really hard to deal with at times. But talking to your professor and your peers who have done this before is always helpful. And knowing that like we have a network, like my professor has colleagues and peers from their past that they've reached out to, and we disseminate our research study and posters to pretty much anyone and that's not, it can feel like a lot and it can feel like you're asking a lot of a person, but knowing that like that's kind of how this type of research works is something that I've learned through this process. So it's been slow, but that doesn't mean that it's a problem, and I think that's kind of the biggest learning curve that I have been on this summer.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else want to jump in there? Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a lot of my project was very difficult when I began. I'm just like working with a slightly different compound that is more difficult to make than the rest of my group. So it was very frustrating, like watching all my other group members like progress and try these new tests, and I was just stuck trying to make this dang thing. And this is like the fourth time I tried to make it, and it just wasn't working, and it wasn't getting purified. So I was like, I'm just gonna calm down, and like I just like dived deep into literature and like really tried to like find something that would help me. And I ended up finding this paper that had a compound similar to mine, and through using their procedure, it's from like 1970, but I was able to use that and get better results. So I just had to like slow down, like calm down, and like find a way that worked. But every day is a new challenge, and like you can't get too high on the days you find things. You can't get too low, because if you do, it's just gonna be a roller coaster. So I mean, today I found some good news, but tomorrow will be bad news. So like, I don't know, just trying to stay level.
Yeah, creative thought works. Am I right?
Yeah.
Anyone else? We can move on. Okay. So we have a question. I was wondering if research programs are beginner friendly. Are the professors good with mentoring you on a beginner level? Yeah, Addie.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I can't speak for every lab, but I know in our lab we have people who aren't even psych majors who are just curious about it and join the lab for fun. And that's totally fine. And it's normal to have a somewhat hodgepodge of people who are all participating in the same lab. And the other thing is, since it's throughout the entire 4 years, there's going to be a senior who's been in it since they were a freshman and be able to kind of help out a little bit more so with the people who are just starting out. I know when me and Katya were just starting, our professor had just taken a sabbatical, and so there were only two people left in the lab who even knew him. And so they played a very big role in helping the rest of us kind of get acclimated to how things get run in the lab and things like that. So both professors and your fellow students are going to be very, very helpful in terms of getting over that learning curve when you start a new lab.
Yeah, Katya.
Yeah, and I want to like add on to that like research there are so many things you can do within research. So like like what like if it's your first day in the lab, no one will be like, oh yeah, like go design and run a study. It will be like more like like simpler tasks to like kind of like get your foot in the door, like learn more about the topic. Like right now like Addie and I are able to like freely like converse about like like the benefits and the usages and the problems with like savoring. But like we always like we're not like that way like when we just came into the lab. It's kind of like just like by spending time in the lab, by like talking to your professor, by running the studies, you'll get to that point. But at the beginning, like nobody, I mean, everyone knows that you're like like you're maybe like a freshman, a sophomore in college. You've probably like barely done any research in your entire life because obviously like you're like 18 years old, so no one really expects that of you, and obviously like, you're in college in undergrad to learn how to do those things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I see a study abroad question, and I do want to talk a little bit about study abroad too. But when it comes to studying abroad, what's the financial aid like? Great question. So if you're participating in one of our Skidmore specific study abroad programs, so those are programs that are designed by Skidmore faculty, or we have 118 other pre-approved affiliate programs. If you're doing any one of those programs, your financial aid package will go abroad with you, which is fantastic. But I do want to talk a little bit about study abroad because I know a few of you have studied abroad. And I'm kind of curious too, like, can research tie in to studying abroad? Rachel, you're nodding your head. Gonna jump in there?
Well, so my study abroad program, it was through a program called the School of International Training, and their program specifically focuses on field experiences. And so I did a program that was based in Ísafjörður, Iceland. And so we lived in this fishing village of about 2,000 people in the West Fjords in Iceland. And so we took classes for the first about 2/3 of the semester. And then the final third of the semester, it was 5 weeks, and we essentially were told to do a research project, and like that was the structure. And so it was a 6 credit course, and we were told to come up with a research question, test that research, get data. And that could be anything from a social science project about like people's perceptions of climate change to something about field work, or some people measured microplastics in the water systems there. And I was able to do something chemistry related even abroad in Iceland. I did a project about the release of isoprene, which is just a volatile compound from the trees there. And so I modeled the release rate of this compound from the trees in this village in Iceland. And so yeah, just you probably won't be able to continue your Skidmore research abroad, but there are study abroad experiences and programs where you can do either like an independent research project like I did, something a little more structured, or you can even study abroad at more of a university, and sometimes they have opportunities to join research labs abroad too. So there's a lot of opportunities for research even abroad, which I think is really cool.
Yeah,
But
great.
also to speak to the financial aid, the only reason I can afford Skidmore is because I think Skidmore has a very generous financial aid program here. And it was massive that all of my financial aid went abroad with me. Like I did not have that many more expenses studying abroad than I do on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that program is so interesting. Was that already a pre-approved program?
So it wasn't on the pre-approved list, but they have approved the organization it's run through before. And so they're actually in the process of getting it on the pre-approved list. So I
Oh,
didn't have to jump through many hoops to get them approve it. I just had to write an additional essay about why it would supplement my learning at Skidmore. But it was amazing. I would 100% recommend Iceland, or thinking about Iceland, or SIT for anyone thinking about studying abroad.
yeah, that's so, so cool. Um, Great. Does anyone else want to add anything about study abroad before we move on? Okay. So, a couple questions here. Is there anything you wish you knew before you started research? Kind of looking back. Yeah, Melanie.
I mean, this will sound very cliche, but like it's okay to make mistakes. My professor made a big mistake yesterday and we still worked through it together. So it happens, even the professionals do it. But it can be really hard going into something with the mindset of like perfectionism and like wanting to do everything the right way, because like even if you do every procedure the right way, things happen out of your control that you just can't manage, and that's okay, and finding a way to like self-regulate through that is really helpful, but like being like mistakes help you learn, and even your professors who are doing research and have done research for decades are still learning.
Yeah, it's a great piece of advice. Does anyone want to add on to that? Okay, so this is a really great question. What qualities make a good research student, especially early on? Yeah, Katya.
I mean, I would say first and foremost is just like the same qualities as like what makes a good student in general. So like being responsible and reliable, especially like if you're working with like real life participants like we do in psychology or like other social sciences, like like be there like for the runs, like be able to like like actually show up for the thing. Just because like it's not just about you at that point and your grade. It's more about like your entire group. So like kind of like making sure that all your just like general study student skills are top notch is a good thing. And then yeah, like Melanie just said, releasing perfectionism, knowing that you're here to learn, knowing that like what you're doing is basically like exploring something that like no one in the whole world knows, like it's kind of like contributing to the science. So like obviously like there's no like right answer, so kind of like both being a good student and at the same time releasing your idea of what like a good like perfect student is like at the same time, I feel like is like the way to go.
Yeah, totally. I think, it's the time to learn and to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So that's great. Does anyone else want to add anything before we move on? Okay. So, ooh, this is a good one. What's your favorite thing about Skidmore, academically and personally? Kind of like for all of you to maybe answer that one. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I think academically, the thing that I love here is that, at least for me, the chemistry department feels like so connected. Like, I feel like there's so much, like, I can walk down to this professor, I have a question about this, or this one, I have a question about this, and like all my friends are in like various labs. Like, I feel like it's very much not like a family, maybe in a way, maybe, but like it's very connected, which I like. And like it's very collaborative and amongst my lab too. I really love that. And also just for me, like the small classes are great. Like I really like that. And I like that a lot of my professors just like their doors open. I can knock, I can always come in, always talk to them. But yeah, it feels very collaborative environment, which I like. And I think personally, like, yeah, I love my friends here. Yeah, I love like all the things I'm involved with. I just think it's beautiful. Like we have the woods right here. We have like the Adirondacks like so close. Like I don't know, it's just a beautiful place to be. I can go walk in the woods if I ever need, and just like great sunsets, a lot of trees. For me, that's important. But yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on the academic piece. I loved the small class sizes when I was a student. I went to a really small high school. There were like 30 kids in my grade, and I was kind of used to that smaller environment. So just being able to have those connections with professors all 4 years was really, really beneficial. Who wants to go next?
This might be a silly thing to love so much about Skidmore, but I love the apartments. So we have on-campus apartments that juniors and seniors can live in on campus. They're typically like a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom situation, and you get your own kitchen to share with these people. And I love that you get to like live with your friends in this genuinely very nice apartment for potentially 2 years. Definitely your senior year, but probably your junior year. It depends. But yeah, I just like I love that. I think it's so homey, and I love that I get to have my own space, but also like live with friends. And the summer housing this summer has been in the apartments, so I get to live with one of my lab mates this summer. So we go to lab, we go to work, and then we just like go home and we get to like mess around in our apartment. So yeah, I think it's lovely here, and like they're right by the woods. So it's just like a cozy, homey place to live. And so yeah, that's probably one of my favorite parts.
I think that's a very valid answer, Rachel. Addie, do you want to go next? Sorry, Melanie.
Um, sure. My cat's moving. Um, uh, Academic wise, kind of echoing what was said earlier, but in a little bit of a different way, the types of bonds you make with your professors, because not only is it small classes, they get to know you as a person, but they also get to know your academic interests, your career goals. They know opportunities on campus, off campus. They can kind of help guide you and just kind of throw things your way. And that's really has shaped my 4 years here in ways that I don't think I would have expected, and has made it such a wonderful experience. Um, So that's academically. Personally, I really like how open it is to be able to try a bunch of new things in terms of like both classes, but also like club life and like just going to see everyone's performances. Um, like you can, I've gone to see Katya's plays multiple times. Melanie came to see me play French horn multiple times. She sat on a radiator for me. Um, and so just kind of how you're able to kind of get a little bit of everything simply by being on campus, in terms of like academics and social life and like anything you want to, basically.
Love that. Melanie, I will go to you.
My answers are like the mirror image of Addie's. It's the same things for the opposite reasons. Academically, I really like that we get to try a lot of new things. Like it's encouraged that we dip our feet into other departments that we're not necessarily majoring or minoring in, and that's like how I found one of my research projects. I took a class that sounded interesting to fulfill two requirements. And my professor introduced their research, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to do this. And I was like, hey, Professor Prince, can I help you with this project? Like, I have so much free time. I'm so bored. Like, this is so cool. And they were like, yeah, totally. Like, I could totally use the help, but also, I'll pay you. Like, you don't need to do this in your free time. So that was a nice bonus. But like, it was just a matter of happenstance. And I really liked that kind of outcome. And I've taken classes in all different departments that have no relation to my major. I took a piano class, like a beginner level piano class with no prior instrumental knowledge or experience. And I had a blast. So I really love that. And then personally speaking, I think my relationship with a lot of my professors is what makes it really wonderful to be on campus. One of my advisors, my psychology advisor, asks me to dog sit for her for time to time, which is like my absolute favorite thing. I'm doing it next week, and I would do it for free, honestly. Like it's wonderful. I didn't grow up with pets, and I love it. So having a professor that knows you well enough to trust you to stay in their basement for a week and watch their beloved pets is like a really high honor in my personal opinion. So I really love that. Like that's kind of the community vibe on campus.
Yeah, I love that. And Katya, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I would add that like academically, so like not only are you encouraged to like like explore and like dip your toes into like different classes and try out new things, it's more even that like for me, like I'm able to so I'm a double major, right, as I mentioned, in theater and psychology. I'm able to do both of them at like a such high level of like fully immersed without feeling the pressure of like you have to choose one. Like there like not a single time like during like my entire time here did I feel that like I would sacrifice one or the other, or couldn't like take something on, because like I was already like doing a second major. So yeah, it's like very cool, not just like for like exploring different like things or taking classes for fun, but also like if you're very serious about like the work in like both of your majors, or like for example like if you have a minor you're very passionate about, it's so common here to like double major or like have like multiple interests that it will never be at your disadvantage. And honestly like oftentimes they will even work to kind of like complement each other in a way that you would not expect. So for example like for me I'm so interested in like organizational psychology as well as clinical, and so like kind of like how groups and like people work together, which is directly just like reflected in everything I ever do in theater. So it's
Mm.
like kind of like the way that Skidmore allows for that to be explored here is just fantastic. So academically I've been having a great time. And then yeah, I mean like pretty much I agree with everything else that like people said, like kind of like personally and socially, like the campus is so nice, it's so like well maintained, it's so beautiful. Like I love giving tours every single day, just like walking through the space and like seeing people at gasp at all the new buildings that we have here. And then yeah, and the town is also pretty nice. And then yeah, the people are great. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all. That was awesome. So I see a couple more questions, and if anyone else has any more last minute questions, feel free to throw those in the chat now. But I see one asking, what was the process of finding a mentor like? So finding like a faculty member that maybe you've had like a nice relationship with, whether that be just in classes or a faculty member that you've done research with.
Well, so how it works in the chemistry department is they host a research open house every fall, typically in October and November. And so anyone interested in getting involved in research can attend the open house. And all the professors give little talks on what their research is. And then they just put out a link to a form, and you get to rank the faculty you might be interested in doing research with, and then they just match everyone to a lab. And usually people get their first choice, if not their second choice or third choice. But typically you can join the lab you're interested in. And then your professor advisor for the research typically becomes a mentor to you, at least in my experience in my lab, that most of my advisors' research students are also like their academic advisees. And yeah, so I think my research advisor definitely mentors me outside of like research specific things. And he's been helping me immensely with like grad school applications this summer. Like every week he's been bringing me in and being like, how's your list coming? Like, let's talk about applications, things like that. So yeah, I think at least in the chemistry department, it's not even that you have to email them to ask to join their lab, although you can do that as well. Like they host this event where they're trying to recruit you. It's more, they want you just as much as you want to join their lab, if not more.
Right. Cole, did I see your hand up?
Sorry, no.
Oh, okay. I know you're pre-med though, right? So do you kind of have
Yeah.
like a separate advisor for pre-med?
Yeah, so there's like I have my pre-med advisor, and actually, yeah, my research advisor is also my academic advisor as well. But also I feel like I can like pop into most teachers I've had's office and be like, hey, like, what class should I take? Or like, but in terms of finding a mentor, I feel like I don't know, professors are people. Just talk to them, and like if you find something that you really click with, like pursue that. I feel like that's kind of what I did, and I was like, oh wait, I really like this guy too. Like I was like, oh, maybe he could be my advisor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I see one more question in here. It's a good one. What's housing look like? Is it guaranteed all 4 years? Do one of my tour guides want to give the tour guide answer, Melanie?
Sure. Housing is guaranteed all 4 years that you're here, so you're never kicked off campus. As Rachel kindly mentioned, our on-campus apartments are very nice, and those are reserved for upperclassmen students. Your first year here, you're likely going to be placed in a triple. You fill out a housing questionnaire, different habits that you have in your living situation. They match you people that you should be compatible with. That's your first year housing arrangement. After that, it's up to you if you live in a single or a double. I personally chose to live in a double. I was very close with one of my first year roommates, and neither of us wanted to live alone. So it was as simple as that. And then my third year of college, I moved into an on campus apartment, and I've been in one ever since. I also believe that our housing is very nice. So it's really nice to stay on campus. That 10% of students who choose to move off campus, it really is down to a simple thing. Either they live in the area and they want to live at home, or they want to live in a larger group. As Rachel mentioned, our housing on campus, like in the apartments, it houses 3 to 5 students in single bedrooms. So if you want to exceed 5 people in one apartment, you would move off campus. And so often, like the men's soccer team and the women's basketball team, like they have a house downtown that they'll live in. And that's really the only circumstance that I've heard of people like really wanting to move off campus. But yeah, hopefully that covers it.
I think you got it all. Thanks, Melanie. And thank you all. I mean, as you can see, there are so many ways that Skidmore has impacted the life journeys and experiences of our students, and the experiences you've heard tonight are a wonderful testament to that. If any of you have any further questions, please join another upcoming Creative Thought Works event, any virtual events that we have coming up, or contact admissions with additional questions at admissions at skidmore.edu. I do want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our wonderful panelists for their time, and to all of you attendees for spending time with us today. We really hope that you enjoyed it. And again, please keep in touch if you have any questions for us. Thank you all so much, and take care.